you so freaking bad. Wrestle me.
Welcome, everybody, to Juice Pro Wrestling, episode 162. 162. Wonderful! Wonderful! Oh, yeah, referencing the Circle Jerks. Hey, I have a very special guest this week. We got some serious shit to talk about. We got a tribute to a legendary figure in the world of professional wrestling, a guy that I adored as a heel and as sometimes as a very rare face in the world of professional wrestling. We have the son of Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, Travis Orndorff, here with us this week. Travis, I'm not going to start off with the usual questions like, you know, how you doing and all that, because that would be silly due to your father's passing on July 12th. I guess what I want to ask you right now is, what are you doing to cope with everything? And, you know, we've all lost someone near and dear to us. Sredden and I both lost our dads, and just like everybody else in the world, you got to deal with that tremendous loss. As wrestling fans, we've had to deal with it as well. But the wrestling and all that bullshit aside, that's your freaking father, man. How are you holding up?
So I'll answer it two ways. The first is there's times in your life that you come across something where you have to be better than yourself, and when that opportunity comes, you don't know what you're going to do, you don't know how you're going to react. But you find strength in ways and in places, and you find resources and community in places you would never expect. So I would, and let me say that I have made so many mistakes in my life, but by the grace of God, my faith, and when I tell you the Holy Spirit gave me strength that I didn't know I had, you know, I don't want to get into embarrassing moments, but when you take in your father, there's things you have to do that you never anticipate. But I found strength in places in ways that I could have never imagined. On the other side of it, or the second way to answer it would be, and I shouldn't have peace. Like in my mind, I fight it. But I know where my father is. Like people say, you lost your father. I didn't lose him. I know exactly where he is. And I don't think you can have that kind of peace without knowing that. And I know for a fact I'll see him one day. And at the end of the day, my father was, you know, when they came in and they obviously did the autopsy and different things, and, you know, we donated his brain. We saw the damage that was there, right? And
Travis, not to interrupt you, but you say you donated his brain. Who did you do that to? Was that the Concussion Legacy Foundation? Or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Dr. Amalu.
Yeah.
And you know, it was the movie Concussion, Will Smith. It was pretty amazing, actually, because, you know, I had no resources. I really didn't know what I was taking on. Even, you know, when you want to try to honor your father, it's one thing. But when you want to try to honor Mr. Wonderful, who happens to be your father, it's weird. Like I felt such an opportunity, but also a burden. But I didn't have to carry that burden by myself. That's the cool part. Like the burden wasn't just on me, like the fans carried it for me. Like I didn't anticipate the responses, the comments, the condolences. The one thing I would say to anybody is, you've given me way too much credit. I've made so many mistakes. And I feel like I still could have been a better son. I always feel like I could have done more. You know, when I saw him in the hospital, it was, I knew I failed him. And I didn't do enough. So I think I'll always live with that regret. I didn't act sooner. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted.
That's a strange trip about life, though, man. And it's something that, like you say, you'll live with it. But I honestly think one day you will come to a point where you understand that there's, you know, you being thrust into a situation like that. You know, me being an outsider looking in, you did the best you can do. None of us are going to be 100% perfect at, you know, that such a critical situation and like such a holy shit, if you will, situation. You know, when my father passed, and I wasn't even close with him, but there was all these things happening, and hospitals calling me out in Illinois. They had no idea who they were, and I had to make these big decisions, like, you know, send them here, do this, do that, and like, so, you know, I've thought about it sometimes, kind of like you said, like, you know, maybe if I could have done more or something, but it was a different relationship with me and my father as opposed to you.
Well, and I think the other thing is I wasn't even aware. Forgive me, my dog Eleanor is going to join in.
Illinois,
So this is my baby, but my wife's upstairs, so I can get away with it. I think the other part of this is, you know, people have to understand I was trusting family members.
Yeah.
And relying on their information and their access. So anyway, at the end of the day, I took what measures I could. I'll always live with that. So I'll tell you, you know, there's moments where I have the peace of God knowing, you know, everything. And then there's a hole in my heart that will never go away.
Right.
You know, I can't, he used to call me a lot. Right. And, I remember a friend of mine, sorry, I'm so emotional.
Dude, let it out, man. Hey man, we're here to listen to you. This is good for you, you know?
So, he used to call and, you know, he'd forget that he called. So he would call sometimes, you know, 15, 20, his record was 29 times in one day. And, you know, I would put it on do not disturb, and I would call and say, hey, we can talk between 7 and 8. Well, that didn't work either, but either way I would call him. Right. And, just check in, and, you know, it might be the same conversation over and over, but, sure would like one more. Oh, sorry guys.
No, dude. Hey,
no reason to be sorry. If you want to be unburdened a little bit, I know when my dad passed away, I found old voicemails and stuff, and I'd replay them. And what sucked was 3 of the voicemails out of the 4 I had were him pissed off at me. So it would be like a voicemail like, hey man, you said you'd come and help out at home. You come over here and do the shit you said you would do like 3 days. There were like 3 voicemails like that. And I'm like, I'm in the deepest depths of mourning. And I was like, this is what I have to remember. Like my father just fucking just tearing into me because I was being irresponsible about, you know, whatever. And then there was a 4th one that was just like, hey, the 4th one was nice. It was like, hey, when are you going to be back? Dinner's almost ready. Like, you know, are you around? And it was just nice to have that.
But if you were to really step back and think about the context of stop it. if you think about the context, he was trying to hold you accountable, but he missed you.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, he was expecting you to be there and spend time with him. And that's where you understand the Father's voice is so different.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, he was just an amazing, like, people don't understand how loving he was, like, genuinely. Like, he wanted me to sit on his lap when I was a kid. I slept in his bed, in his room, you know, and I know a lot of parents don't allow their kids to sleep. Man, that was like a standard. Like, you got to sleep in Papa's room, right?
Right. And, I'm the same way with my kids.
Sit there and sleep on those hard rock arms, and you know, you wake up with a neck bruise and sweating.
Right.
And
bicep indention in your face.
Right. And let me just say, like, what's funny is I went to the gym probably, I mean, every day he was home, I was with him. The best part is, I remember one time I was really young, was in karate, and he wouldn't let me cut my hair because he thought my hair was beautiful. Now, thank you. Got grandpa's genes, evidently. And
me too, damn it.
So I know my brother got the other genes, but I'm not incarcerated, so there's that. But I just, I'm sorry, I'm losing track of myself, but okay. Dad just was he was so loving, like genuinely come sit on my lap, come love on me. Like if you went, like I got his notes, right? I'm looking through his, like what I call his Rolodex. We're just legal pads where he writes stuff over and over. He wrote the word love so many times. Like you would, like every time I'd see my name, it would have stars and doodles and be like, I love you, son. And, he put on paper what he was thinking every time he called me, which was just, I love you. And that's what my life was like with him. Like if anybody asks, what was he like as a father? God almighty, every day of my life, he said he was proud of me and he loved me, like no matter what I did. And he would always also say, which I think is important for parents to hear, Travis, do you have pride in yourself? Are you proud of yourself? Do you realize what you accomplished? Do you realize what you can accomplish? So he instilled in me not only to be happy that I got my father's approval, but it was more important that I had my approval. Yeah. And I think as parents, we don't realize sometimes when you say to a kid, I'm proud of you, they're going to live their life living out, trying to get your approval. And my dad never tried to force, like I knew I was accepted. I genuinely think I could have chosen any lifestyle, no matter what you think. And he would have gone, I love you. He might not have agreed with me because we argued all the time. I was much more moderate. He was much more conservative. I think he became more moderate later in life for sure. But, he was, God, you just had to be around him. Like you'd come over and he'd be like, Trav, come up to my room. You go up, you want a beer? And he had that chainsaw voice. He wasn't like, so his
voice was so awesome.
I love you. Like, I'm the devil. I love you. You could hear his voice. I mean, it reverberated like it echoed against the walls. But man, how could somebody with that chainsaw voice be such a sweetheart? And I mean, say stuff that was so caring that you just stop it, that you just wouldn't think it would come out of that character, right? Especially the arrogance. Now, make no mistake, he was extremely proud of his body, but
hey, you put the work in to look like that.
And always say this.
Yeah,
he used that body to get to a goal, and he became the workout machine he did to protect the trauma and the childhood he had.
He had it pretty rough growing up. I think
brutal, dude, like brutal. So,
or his parents were? He was like straight German, right?
So, okay, so I did my DNA test because I'm not I get it that people are like, you don't look like him. I'm like, yeah, that crossed my mind too. But like, you think when I was 9 years old, I wasn't like, what the hell, dude? Why do I have black hair and no muscle? Like, why am I the shortest one in class? And my dad used to joke, and so, well, actually, Bobby Heenan used to joke. He's like, son, it's because you can read. And so he would tell me to tell that to people. But
you used to hang around with Bobby and shit too. I mean, because he managed your dad back in the day a couple of times, man. So he would be like chilling with you guys at the house and stuff too.
So not really at the house, but so what most people don't realize is this is how much of a family man my dad was. While he was going out being Mr. Wonderful, I was traveling with him for weeks at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I genuinely remember at least 6 months, 8 months in 9 different years, I was out on the road with my father. Now, it might have been 1 year when I was 13, we went to Australia for 24 days or 25 days. When I was, and again, you know, I don't remember that well, but I can remember when I was young going to Tennessee with them for 3 days. So that would have put me at 4 or 5 years old. So we would go, I remember 1 year, and this was when I was in a Montessori school. We went up to New York, and I left in the middle of the school year for several weeks. We went to the Statue of Liberty. It was when Dad was at the WWF, and we traveled with him. I mean, I remember going to Little Italy, and I remember going to, you know, different restaurants. And I remember going to places that my dad were like, "You're not allowed to come in." So like, I don't remember what happened, but I know at one point in time, I'm like, "Dad, did we ever meet mobsters?" And he was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Okay, thank you." So
no doubt.
There were, you know, you got to understand, like when I was with him, I was literally like side by side with him. When I was around the boys, you think he was going to let me out of his sight?
No.
Like he would leave me with a wrestler, you know, to hang out with when he'd go into the ring. And the rest of the time I was sitting right next to him, and he would say, "Stay there." One of the boys would watch me, and he'd go, you know, playing the match or whatever. And then we'd go to the hotel, you know, get in the car, and I would travel with him by myself. Like, I can't believe my mother let me do this at this age.
Yeah.
Like, I go back to that story. One time we were in, and I don't remember exactly, it was Boston or Philadelphia, but we, you know, came out, he put the towel over his head. We got in the back of an ambulance. They drove us down the street. They put us in our car. Somebody tipped him off, and they were trying to tip the car over. And I'm in the floorboard of the car because my dad had so much heat. Oh, and, you know, we had to get out of town, and we would have to drive to other towns to sleep. And that was my childhood. Like but like, to me, it was normal. Like,
yeah,
you know, if you grew up with your dad being a plumber and coming home and at 6 o'clock and having dinner from, you know, 6:30 to 7, that's all you know. But that's all I knew. And that was just normal life.
Who were some of the guys that you, if you can remember, that like when, say, your dad would go have a match or he'd leave you with, is there anybody in particular that you
absolutely
loved being around?
Junkyard Dog was one of my boys for real. Like, and I remember, I don't know why Dad would have me do this, but he used to always have me joke and have me go pinch him on the butt. And he would, you know, jump up and make, you know, big to do. That one, I don't know why he sticks out the most. But I know I sat with him several times. I sat with Roddy once. You know, when I was 18, you know, I went up to, you know, so there's times when I would go in and I was really young, and there was times that I was just 18 years old walking around.
Right.
And so I remember walking, you know, when I was like 18 or 19, I was in college for the one semester. And we went up to, it was in North Alabama, Huntsville. Okay, and one of my college roommates was a huge wrestling fan. I was like, "Hey, come with me." So we went up there, and I remember one of my pastors, and a guy that helped me get into school, he was a huge wrestling fan, so I brought him up too. So I got him seats. My dad got him seats on the front row on the corner, and he was a huge Sting fan at the time. So Sting drops in the ring, and he walks up, and Jason gets to pat him on the back as he's walking in the ring. And then while I go up there, like this guy Mike, we got him great seats, and he's like, "This is great," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is wrestling." So I'm in the back, and I'll tell you, it was funny. My dad brings me in the room, and he goes, "Hey, Terry, do you remember Travis?" And he, you know, Terry looks at me, he's like, "Well, holy shit, you got old." And Randy's sitting there, and he says, "What are you going to school for?" You know, Terry says that. I'm like, and at the time I was going for congregational studies. And he's like, don't get too goddamn smart on us. And then Randy goes, motherfucker, he just said he was going to congregational studies. You know, and you know, we're all laughing, and then I walked out of the room, and that was the end of it. So, but you know, sometimes they would film down in Orlando for 2 or 3 months at MGM, and you know, we would just
the WCW days,
yeah. So we would go stay at a little villa in Orlando for a month and a half and whatever, and go to shows, and you know, walk around Disney in 110-degree weather.
Yeah,
it was brutal. So I actually, you know, if I never see Walt Disney again, I'm good.
Yeah, I hear you with that, man. I went there a bunch as a kid, but the only cool thing was, like you said, a lot of those wrestlers would walk around. Like the last time I was there, I think was high school band 20 years ago. We're coming from, you know, Northwest Indiana down to Florida, and dude, guys like people would meet Arn Anderson just walking around. Coco Beware was down there. Like, it's just so weird. You hear people's like, oh, I saw like DDP or something. Like, get out of here, man.
So here's the funny thing is, and I can't speak for, and I mean this in a weird way. I have no idea what it's like to be a fan.
Right.
Like,
you never gave two shits about the wrestling aspect, although your father's just like, and dude, he's a huge superstar. There's a reason he's in the freaking, you know, Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, and there's a few more. There is a reason for that, and he is a memorable character. You know, he's one of those guys from a bygone era that, dude, you had Macho Man, you had your dad, you had Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, Hulk Hogan, all these guys that Andre the Giant, that you could just list off that were, they're like your Spider-Mans or your Batmans, you know, they were these huge characters. I'm not just talking about like heroes or villains, characters, dude. They're so memorable that, you know, it's something that nowadays wrestlers, I think, are really trying to grind that axe to find again, because there's a lot of good wrestlers out there. And you say you're not really a fan of it. It's just kind of weird to see that your father's generation of talent like that was, dude, it was the golden era, because those guys were so important to everything that the business is now. And, you know, not to mention, you know, your dad was a trainer down at the power plant in WCW after his wrestling career was over. So yeah, he's down there training guys, and that's a testament to his character as well, because a lot of the old school dudes back then didn't want to pass much on, you know, and if they did, dude, you want to talk about Marine and military training, all that shit, these dudes, hazing, whatever you want to call it, these dudes would literally do some shit to test the hell out of you to see if you would last, that if you gave enough of a damn about the business to be able to be trained by them, you know, and like your dad just went in with the power.
Well, even when my dad went into it, you know, going back to how he even started, you know, it was a Saturday morning, and my grandfather, which his father-in-law, and all of us still are sitting here kind of, you know, we've heard the stories, and none of us have ever figured out how my grandfather knew Hiro Matsuda, or, you know, like we have no clue how my grandfather got him there. But my dad and everybody says my grandfather worked for, he was in the military. He was in the 19th Infantry of the Rock of the Marne, Korean War. I've got his medals over here. And beyond my father, my grandfather Ross Maxwell is that's my soulmate. And so my grandpa, they were sitting there watching wrestling on a Saturday, and my dad said, I can do that. And my grandpa said, okay, I'll make a phone call. And he was in a tryout that Monday. And if I'm not mistaken, they had asked him to do like, you know, 1,000 squats, right? And
make him throw up.
You know, my dad was in such ridiculous shape. He was doing jumping squats. Yeah. And they were like, you don't have to jump. He's like, okay. And so they had him do that for like a week. It was something crazy. And they were like, okay, we'll let you in. And I know he tells a story, and I'm trying to remember who the guy was. It might have been Bill Watts, who he always gave credit to Bill Watts. For
Bill Watts, yeah.
Changing his career. But Bill was like, look, Paul, if I don't see something from you, you're done. And Mr. Wonderful came out the next night and never went away.
That's awesome. Dude, what? So like, it's just so weird for me talking to like because this is real. Yeah, I would say this is really the first conversation I've had with a son of like a professional wrestler of your father's magnitude. You know, I mean, the guy, super legend. You know, it really bummed me out, man. Like, it's just like so many of those guys from that era are gone for albeit whatever reason. I'm not here to judge any of them. Not all of them were bad. Some of them's just natural causes, whatever. But I'm watching so when the WWE network first started up, right? They started this really cool concept. I like the table for three idea where it's just, dude, it's three legends or cats, whatever. They're just sitting there chilling, having a meal and some drinks, smoking a cigar, whatever, and talking and reminiscing about the old, having great conversation. I love that shit. The very first episode, Mean Gene Okerlund, Roddy Piper, and your father, dude. And I went back and I watched it. I was like, damn, man. And it was kind of hard to watch. You know, even just as a fan standpoint, I mean, I know I'm not the one who lost a father, which I can't begin to, you know, other than losing one myself. That's the only way I can identify with you, because that's a horrible thing, you know?
I think here's what is weird. And I've tried to reconcile this in my brain, but I remember when I was a young kid, you know, 8 years old, and my mom got pulled over for a speeding ticket. And so I'm sitting there, and the police come over, and I mean, I'm really young. My mom told me the story. So we get pulled over anyway. They end up saying, "Oh, Mrs. Orndorff, oh, I'll let you go." And I started crying, right? And my mom said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Because we should have gotten a speeding ticket, and they're treating us different, and I don't want to be treated different anymore." So, you know, I think
it's admirable, Travis, but I would have got the hell out of there without a ticket.
Well, my mom said the exact same thing, and I think I would have been appreciative of that later in life. But at 8 years old, I think the point had nothing to do with the speeding ticket as much as, you know, everywhere we went, you know, somebody was coming up for an autograph. Yeah. I can remember one time we went to the special, you know, my dad sponsored the Special Olympics several times, and God, he had a heart for kids that suffered from disabilities. And I'll tell you what, if you ever used the R word, he would light your ass up. No, like he was on that 30 years ago, I assure you. You know, people don't use the word now. That he didn't use it back then. If you use that, he would put you in your place. I remember a parent speaking down to one of their kids once, and he pulled him aside and said, "I will never allow you to talk to that kid again that way." And I'm like, "Dad, I don't think you can actually enforce that," but he would try.
His shirt off, like, "Yeah, I can. I'm Mr. Wonderful."
So, you know, his voice and his stature was so strong, right? He was so imposing, right? But here's the funny thing, and you just have to have my perspective. He was my daddy, and he always called me his baby boy. Dad would start getting really pissed, and I would start laughing, and then he would get mad at me and start laughing because he knew he was being ridiculous. Yeah. And then he would do it to me too, you know. And you know, we would try to, you know, poke each other all the time.
You guys ever rib each other?
Oh, God almighty, unbearably at times. You know, I think you might have heard the story, but like when I brought him home, I had set up his bed, which is about, you know, 10, 20 feet away. And we had an alarm for if he got out of bed, it would alert me, and I'd wake up and go in there. Well, I had accidentally not turned on my notifications. So I had fallen asleep on the couch at like 1:30 in the morning, and I would wake up every 2 hours, give him medication or whatever, or every 4 hours, whatever it was at first. But I think it was every 4. But I was asleep on the couch, and it was 1:30 in the morning. And the only reason I know that is because he came over and he poked me. And I looked up and I jumped. And I mean, I jumped off the couch and I'm like, "What the, Dad?" And he laughed uncontrollably. I mean, he thought it was so funny. So like, that was just what we did. I can remember, you know, I think I have anxiety because of it, because like if you walked in front of the car, he was going to honk the horn and scare you. Right. You know, I remember one time, what I did was, and he didn't like being got back, but man, I got him really good one time. So they had this, like Asian bed. And so, you know, as a young kid, I could go underneath it. It was made of wood and the bed sat on the frame, right? So I could slide underneath it. So one night when he thought I was asleep, I snuck underneath the bed. And when he walked up to get inside the bed, I reached out and grabbed his leg. And he broke his toe.
Oh, shit.
Kicking the bed, and was so pissed. And then my mom would have to calm him down like, this is what you brought on yourself.
Yeah.
But I scared the living death out of him. So I think I got him the best of the two of us. That one time I got him the best. I think that might have trumped every other time. Although he was really bad, like, because he was such a hunter, right? And he always would put his like he left his camouflage clothes on the front railing of the front porch. Like he didn't care if neighbors saw. He didn't.
What would he hunt?
Boar, deer, turkey, me. Just about. Yeah, that was just about it. But he would get deer pee, you know, and put that on his clothes because
Oh yeah.
But you don't know this as a young kid, so he'd be like, "Hey, you need to smell it real quick," and then when you did, he'd pour a little bit on you.
Oh,
And it was unbearable. And what was funny was, so I was over at the house and I was telling my wife about it, and my niece Brandy, or my sister Brandy, goes, "He did that to you too?" And it was like we found out he had done it to every single one of us at some point in our lives. And my nephew Chandler's like, "Oh man, he got me too." Like he had gotten all of us with smelled us and dabbed a little deer pee on you. And that stuff stinks, by the way.
Yes,
it's
it
like
does.
straight ammonia with like stench.
yeah. Well, it is deer. There's deer piss. It's real deer piss. You know, if you don't want them to see it before you plug them, then you got to do something to cover up.
Man, I get it. Whatever. I was like, so what's funny is, you know, I went hunting with him one time when I went hunting with him several times, but after this one time, I never went like on the hunt. I would always go and chill out and then like cook out.
Yeah.
So, we went one time and it was so cold. I mean, unbearable. And the temperature had dropped like 20 degrees lower than we expected.
Well, you're down in Atlanta, right?
We lived in Fayetteville, Georgia, but we would hunt South Georgia, like Meriwether County.
You guys talk about cold. You're talking about like 50 degrees or something. I mean, we're up here in Chicagoland, dude. We get blasted by this.
Listen, no. I lived in Indianapolis for a period of time, and the last week before I was there, it was negative like 15 with a negative 45 wind chill. I get you. I totally get you. Here's the difference. You have clothes that are prepared for negative 45 degrees. Like I didn't go out in like a pair of shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So when it drops to 15 degrees in Georgia, and it does,
shuts down,
and you're in the woods and you're dressed for 55, that shit is cold. So you got to layer up. I don't care where you are. In fact, I remember when I moved from Indianapolis to Atlanta, man, I would go to work and I would just be sweating uncontrollably. And they were like, "You're wearing winter jackets." And I'm like, "What?" And they were like, you need summer clothes." And I'm like, "What are y'all talking about?" And I went to Men's Warehouse. They're like, "Oh yeah, we make them from different materials." I'm like, "Oh, this makes complete sense." So, your clothes are prepared for it. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I moved back to Atlanta, I remember the first day I took my son to the bus stop. And so I'm a huge Miami Hurricanes fan. And I'm wearing a Miami Hurricanes t-shirt, pair of shorts, pair of flip-flops, and I walk them down to the bus stop. And every car that passes me, and it's a long line, is just staring at me. And I'm assuming it's because they're all University of Georgia fans, right? Because I see Georgia Bulldog. Yeah. And I looked at my son, I'm like, "Why are all these people staring at me?" Then all of a sudden, this guy walks by in a pair of North Face pants and jacket and earmuffs and galoshes. And I'm like, oh, they think this is cold. So they thought I was, so coming from Indianapolis to Georgia, I totally get it. Like, I was out in shorts and a t-shirt and they thought it was cold. And I'm like, this is 40 degrees and the sun's out. This is sun weather. I've since adapted, but yeah, we go out and it was freezing cold. I ended up having to put my shoes inside of his boots, right, to wrap them up because my feet are so cold. We ended up staying the whole day. He ends up killing a deer. He was so happy. He was so proud. We go out there. He guts the deer. I'm gagging. And I'm like, this was the most miserable experience of my life. I never want to do this again. And so when he would say, you want to go hunting? I'm like, I'll go to the camp because we would cook ribs and hang out and they would drink whiskey and beer. So it was, much more cool. Right. But he lightened up. He wasn't as intense of a hunter with my nephew. He was a little more patient and with my nieces, with my son. Yeah, I tell you what, if he went to the woods, he was bringing my nephew, or he was bringing one of my own kids. Like, that's just who he spent time with family. Yeah. Like if people wonder, that people have asked, like, how many wrestlers came to the funeral? I'm like, I don't know why you think they would. He didn't hang, like, all those wrestlers and these different people that have spoken out on Twitter about different things. Like, I talked to Paul Orndorff 10 years ago. Really? Because I talked to him every day for 43 years. Right. And I don't give a shit what you think. You don't know my dad. You might know a version or a part, but let me tell you, you spend 24 hours with him is different than 1 hour of a video or an interview or him remembering the days. That's not my dad. My dad was out there hunting and hung out and called me every day to tell me he loved me. We didn't ever talk about wrestling. That was only a portion of his life. So anybody that thinks that they know my dad, it's ridiculous and embarrassing that their ego believes that because they talked to my dad a few times on the telephone, and I don't give a damn who they think they are, they know him better than I do. There's nobody on this planet that spent more time, quality time, independent, solo time, having conversations about faith, about love, about marriage, about mistakes, about regret. Nobody spent more time than my father than I did. Nobody.
That's for sure, brother. That's for sure. Was there anybody that in particular that he really kept close with? Like, we all get homies and best friends from all walks of life, whether it's work or whatever. And with professional wrestling being his line of work, was there anybody that was, I guess you could say, like his best friend, his ride or die, his homie, that he's maybe. So
I think most people would say another person than what I believe. I'll tell you the guy he talked to.
There more than anybody else, so fuck what anybody else knows.
It's funny what people will promote and how much you can just say on social media and say, oh, I do this and I'm close to this. And, there was a portion of that, but most of them used him. So the people that he talked to on the phone the most, I have this conversation with my nieces and sisters. He talked to Brad Reagans, and if you look him up, he was a gold medalist in the Pan Am Games, if I'm not mistaken, in 1980. Yeah. And he was a real deal, like, badass wrestler. Would have won the Olympics if we didn't boycott, is what I understand. But I'm going back a long time and I'm remembering stories. But Brad Reagans was, I don't even know what they talked about. They talked on the phone for hours. And I'm pretty sure they were watching hunting shows and talking about hunting most of the time. But, like, Brad Reagans for sure. And that name always stuck. And I could be wrong about this, but him and Steve Austin, I don't think they kept in touch as much, but
he was down there at the power plant. Yeah, Austin, and even wrestling. I think your dad, he was still, because I remember the Saturday night WCW, those, like, the early.
Well, I remember spending time when he was stunning Steve Austin, and it was him and my dad and me in the back seat, and we were just driving through Fayetteville. Steve lived in Atlanta, I think, at one point, because we went over to his house a couple times, and one time he had a 3 on the tree old truck, and my dad was thinking, I don't know if my dad was thinking about buying or whatever, but they taught me how to drive it. And in fact, I remember when I got my first car, it was a little Nissan a hard body pickup, like 1990. This is 94.
You remember the truck? This was Austin's truck, right?
Yeah, that was Austin's truck. But
was it like
I ended up getting. I'm sorry.
Was it like an old kind of like, because they just did like this documentary on him on A&E, and he had this old, I think it was a Ford truck. I mean, it was old.
This was a 3 on the tree. I couldn't tell you what truck it was. I mean, I was 16 years old or 15 years old.
Right.
And
I bet
we were just riding around, and he was showing me how to drive it. Right.
Yeah.
And they were cool. They were just drinking a beer and hanging out. And, it was out on his property. I don't even remember where he lived. It was so long ago, but I can remember my dad and him having conversations, just very deep. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but, I even remember one time reading, Steve said, my dad told him, Steve, don't ever forget there's life after wrestling. And those are the kind of, that was the kind of conversation they had. It was very meaningful. Yeah. Very much like, hey, I'm on the end of this. I'll tell you, if you thought he was great at Mr. Wonderful, he was a better trainer and developer. Like, for real. Like, he belonged as a trainer. He was great at it. I mean, intense, put him through it, got him ready. The problem was he wanted to go at it just as bad as they did, and his body couldn't. He can't do that anymore, and he didn't know how to turn that part off and just be a speaker.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of those guys to turn that off, So to be able to make a transition and actually take pride in, you just raised the next, group of.
We were at the Hall of Fame. And I don't remember the circumstances, but they wanted Dad to show somebody something while we were at the Hall of Fame, and he started doing bumps, and I'm like, dude, no.
Stop it, Dad.
Like, no, I'm serious. Like, and I don't remember the wrestlers that were there. Like, there was, I want to say Ricky Steamboat was there.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is back in 2004, because I was there at the Hall of Fame. Like, I'm the one that went with them to the Hall of Fame for WWE. And so I was sitting actually right behind the Hogans. And
so was that the same year Hogan got inducted?
Yeah, I was there.
Yep.
You can see a bald white dude right behind Brooke, and that was me. So, Dad, I don't know how to go into like the relationships. Like, when we were out in LA for the Hall of Fame, I saw him run into different people, and I could see a connection. Right. But going back to his friends, Brad Reagan's, we had those moments with Steve, if we'll call it that. But I remember getting my truck and Steve calling me saying, I heard about that little sissy truck you got. I'm gonna put it in the back of my Ford, and I'm gonna drop it off in a river. So he was Austin 314 when I was 16, which is way before he was Austin 316. That's true story. He called me to give me crap about my new truck. And I'll say this, when Rick Rude passed, that broke his heart. And I mean, genuinely broke his heart. He cried. In fact, while he was at the, before I got him home, we went up and I spent some time with him, and he wrote the name Rick Rude down.
Really?
Yeah. And this is like a month ago.
Right.
He loved Rick, loved him. I don't know why. I know when Rick came over, he would either have his Chevy Blazer or his Jaguar, and he would let me drive it when my dad's truck to go hunting.
Yeah.
So to me, Rick was the coolest dude on the planet. Like, I got to drive a Jaguar to high school, convertible, green,
right,
tan.
Hang out with Rick Rude, pick up chicks.
Oh man, they were a little underage for him, I hope. But
it's true.
So other than that, like, I know he talked to Brian Blair occasionally.
The Killer Bees,
yeah. And Brian looked out for him later in life with a couple of shows and things. Beyond that, I mean, he loved a lot of guys. I mean, he did. Like you would see these connections, but to be honest with you, you don't know the people. You don't know these names: Hitchcock, Tommy Sadler, Hugh Kirby, Ike Reichard, Daryl Hayes. Those are people that he talked to and were his spiritual mentors, and people he went hunting with. Rock, Randy Tynes. Those guys aren't famous, but those were his buddies. Those were the guys that called him when he was having a bad day, or the guys that he would call when he needed to get out of the house away from my mother. Those were his buddies. Those were his friends. And there's a longer list of those than there will ever be wrestlers. And I think that was how my dad was. He didn't want to, I know this sounds weird. He was an introvert. And Mr. Wonderful was a persona and a job. It provided him income. He liked the other stuff that came with it, and obviously was proud of his body, but at the end of the day, he wanted to be home with his family.
Yeah. I could totally identify with that, man. I love like the family time and shit, and just being together with like your good friends, your good homies, like even this big lug piece of crap Sretton over there, wherever he's at. We just hang out and kick it, make a meal, have some drinks, watch some whatever the hell we're gonna watch, and just have a good time, or hang out with the family. Like it's weird. I get the introvert part too, because I'm a guy who does a podcast and fronts a band, and I'm supposed to interact. And sometimes I get weird. Like for instance, shout out to Steve and Eric from Warrior Wrestling. You guys put a hell of a show on this past weekend. Had a great time there, but I got there and I was like, backstage and the thing, I'm just sitting there and all the wrestlers, everybody's in there, and people I know that I've talked to, but I was just like, I just felt like, man, this feels weird here for me. Like I think I'd rather be in my backyard, and no offense to anybody, because I had a great time. It was a great show, but I felt so introverted. I just wanted to curl up in a ball. Like, where's Sretton at?
Well, I think you will relate to this because, it's funny because I wanted to, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. And I was actually friends with somebody that became very famous and went on to go on to fame and fortune and get his own TV show and stuff. And
you're not going to name drop him right now.
Huh?
You're not going to name drop him.
It was Keenan Thompson.
Nice.
We went to school together.
Good burger, dude. School.
We did a couple of plays together. I wanted to do the same thing he was doing when he got the opportunity. And, my dad obviously knew that was my interest. I was doing plays and stuff. And my dad was like, no, you can't do it till you're 18, because in his mind, he knew, and this isn't, a judgment of anybody. He saw a side of that business he didn't want me to be a part of. Right. He didn't want me to do the drugs and the booze and all the other stuff that comes with it. People don't talk about that stuff until somebody, has a meltdown.
Yeah,
that's just a regular day of life until they have actors.
Look at River Phoenix, dude.
I think I saw the quote the other day. Nobody fakes depression; they fake being okay. So a lot of these guys, wrestlers in particular, they had rough upbringing. It's not like they were going to counseling. And
even know what the hell that was for most of these guys.
No, God, we didn't even start, with mental health until the mid '80s, if I'm not, or early '80s.
Old school dudes. It's like you hear counselors like, "Fuck your feelings. You want to talk? That's not manly."
Yeah, I know. Which is funny because I remember I watched a movie with my son that broke both of our hearts. It's called I hope I say this right, The Mask I Live In, and it's about patriarchy and kind of this where we would be called the F word if we had any emotions as a child. Right. And I had taken that manly version my dad had given to me, even though he had given me the soft part, he had not given me some of the communication skills. And we watched this movie together, and I looked at my son and I'm like, oh my God, I projected this on you. And we bawled our eyes out, realizing, and I'm like, I love you unconditionally. I don't care about this other stuff. This is not how you become a man. So, my father's legacy should be more about, he came from the most traumatic, maybe not the most, that's the exaggeration, but an extremely traumatic childhood. He overcame it. He wasn't perfect, but he found his faith and he found his grounding. He had children. He made mistakes, but he taught me how to learn from them. He kept me as an anchor. And even after I diverged down a dark path myself and had my own demons that I had to deal with, I came back to that faith. And his legacy is living on in myself and in my child, who, you know, my son's in college and hopes to go to law school. So that doesn't happen without a Paul Orndorff at a very young age deciding he's going to get out of the hell he's in. And so the respect I have for my father for that legacy, that's why I wanted to celebrate it, because that's who he was.
Like you're saying with your father and the legacy he leaves. And dude, the legacy that I get from everything that I've heard in this small amount of time we've spent together is a man's man who was a family man, you know, a guy that has the alpha, but also has that in between, that balance, you know, that
he
soft
was,
and
he was very, the word that Hugh Kirby used, who baptized him and is one of my spiritual mentors, worked out with him today. In fact, amazing man, such a blessing. He referred to him as meek, because if you knew my dad, he was quite insecure, you know, and so again, that persona was, you know, almost a wishful thinking, right? But he had a discipline and a work ethic that was, you know, very rarely seen. In fact, when I was talking to Hugh today, Lee Haney was telling, you know, the Olympian was telling Hugh, they were talking on the phone, and I got to work out with Lee a long time ago. And my dad, Lee just sent his condolences. And, you know, he always says to Hugh, he's like, man, Paul better thank his wife, or no, but Paul better kiss his mother and thank God, because that man had natural gifts that not many people have, you know. And that was kind of Lee's, and that's a, you know, that's a 8-time Olympian or 8-time
Mr. Olympia.
Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, he broke Schwarzenegger's record.
Thank you, Stat Boy. I told you would do it. Stat Boy. So
I like that.
yeah, and you know, the cool thing is people want wrestlers to have come to his funeral and to have, you know, spoken about him. But if I had a choice, I would have much rather had the fans, because those are the people that actually loved him. Those are the people that followed him. Those are the people that helped out with the funeral expenses. Those are the people that made sure he was honored. Those are the people that have sent me sincere condolences. You want to send a condolence on Twitter and hope that the family sees it? Great. But you know what? When you know that somebody's out there, you can pick up the phone. So I have, just to be honest, I could give 2 shits about the wrestling community in many cases, because they haven't been the ones that have reached out and supported. Now, they're the ones that put it on the internet, but the people that have reached out have been fans. So if it were up to me, and I mean this sincerely, if you think I have more respect for wrestlers than I do fans, you're wrong, because those are the ones that are sincere. Those are the ones that have reached out. Those are the ones that have helped. You know, it's so funny. I think we give so much credit to the talent, but it's the passion of the people that watch that make all this run. Everybody wants to know which wrestler showed up. You know what? I read messages from people that they told me how they were going to go back to church because they saw the message about my dad and felt okay to, be forgiven. I saw people that loved my father for his intensity, for his physique, for his work ethic. Not a wrestler ever said those things, but fans said things that brought me to tears and brought me a sense of peace, a sense of closure, a sense of gratitude. I knew how much I loved my dad. I knew how much my family loved my dad. I didn't know till this happened how much everybody else loved my dad.
Hey,
And
that's like a
that's
ton
more
of bricks,
meaningful.
I bet, man.
That's more meaningful than anything a wrestler could have said at his funeral. And that is from the bottom of mine and my father's heart. I mean that with every fiber of my being. He was nothing without you guys. He was nothing. And he knew it. And he appreciated it. And they appreciated him back. Because he never did this shit to impress the producers, the promoters, or anybody else. He did it because he was going to make sure you got your value for your ticket.
Hell yeah. Dude, did like anybody from WWE, I'm not asking like show up, but did they even reach out to you guys? I mean, other than
they sent a
tweet?
They sent a little flower arrangement. But here's my point about that. I work in the financial industry.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I've worked in it for 10 years. I've worked for the place I've been for several years. When I pass away, I don't expect my employer to send flowers to my funeral. My previous employer, an employer that I worked for 30 years ago.
Right.
And I don't expect them to pay my funeral expenses. I didn't expect anybody else to pay them. I just had to take on a burden, and I wanted to make sure I honored him, and I needed help to honor him. And if people wanted to participate, they could. If they didn't, that was fine. I went on faith when we planned it, and it all came together. We almost hit our goal on the GoFundMe, which is totally amazing. I am fortunate enough that I can make up the difference and pay the difference. So this has turned out to be altogether, though there's so many people that will be negative about it, this has come together in such an amazing way. It's been such an amazing blessing. And, part of what I would go back to is when people ask why did we do all this? Because I shared him with you. You were part of me as much as you were part of him. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to explain it, but he was my dad, and I felt what he felt. And I was there when y'all asked for autographs. I was the one that was, eating, or
thriving because of it, because of the passion.
I was the one that was at my baseball game and turning around as I'm batting to see people ask for autographs. So I used to, at a young age, I remember not appreciating it, obviously, because I felt like I was getting my dad stolen from me. But it's like a weird extended family. And I didn't know I had it until now.
Right.
I mean that. Like, I if you got to go through my messages, and I can't read every one, I really tried.
Yeah.
And I try to reply because they're so meaningful. But so many people have said so many kind words. It's given me faith in humanity, man. Like, there are so many things that people have done so great in life that bring us together, even if it's at the end, but think about how the impact these people had on your life. It changed you. And not everybody gets to celebrate that. And so we should appreciate it. We should embrace it. My friend Craig describes it as a beautiful tragedy. And to live and soak in all of it, both the good and the bad, because this pain defines us, this joy defines us. And if anything else, this should encourage us to be better, because that's what my dad was. He was better, and he pushed. And, he was just a flawed, sinful, but grace-filled, humble man.
He was wonderful, dude. He's Mr. freaking wonderful.
He truly was. I remember thinking that was just a nickname, but he lived up to it. For real.
I'm to you. I mean, it was a nickname created, but I'm gonna have to reiterate time after time here. I mean, dude, that's your dad. He was that to you. That was just like a great name to bestow as a character, but then he is that character to you as, you know, as a son.
And in a weird way, let me tell you this, and I don't know, this might be a finishing line, but I'll tell you this. The hardest part was people thought, and I've only come to this in a short period of time. So I'm not grandiose, and I don't have delusions of grandeur. I thought following in my father's footsteps meant wrestling. People used to ask me, why don't you follow in your father's footsteps? It turns out I did, because the relationship that I have with my son is thick as blood. My son Tyler we talk almost every other day, if not every day. If not, I just text him I love him, or send him a meme or a text of some sort. The relationship I have with my youngest, I followed in his footsteps. It just was how I raised my children. And it wasn't on TV. It wasn't on the internet. I stayed low key, and just, I wasn't a perfect husband by any stretch of the imagination. Made a lot of mistakes. But I was a damn good father. I'm a damn good father. And I can say that on behalf of both of my children. So I think I carried his legacy in a different way than people expected. But it was a legacy he would have rather me have. He never wanted me to be a wrestler. He wanted me to be a godly man. And I'll continue to work towards that.
There you go. Because that's all you could be. That's the meaning of life. Whatever you believe, albeit religious wise or otherwise, in my opinion, is, you know, to raise my kids just to respect your fellow man and live good and be good to each other. It's a simple concept that for whatever reason, 99.9% of humanity in the world just don't fucking get. I don't know why. It's not hard, you know, to just love one another and be nice and respect family and love, you know, like, and bring that all in. Like, and you're doing that now with your kids. And that's so awesome that you can take that away from your father and say, yes, I did follow in his footsteps because he made me a man. You know, he gave me a good moral compass to go off of. And that's a lot. And there's a lot of kids, unfortunately, that don't have that. They don't even have a father figure in their lives, you know, like, some more power to you for that, man. Let
me give you the flip side of this, just because I'm going to be really real about this story.
Do it.
Now, this is one of those stories that I probably shouldn't say because it's going to get shared. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I might have been dabbling in inappropriate behavior in my, probably for a long time, but specifically in my early 20s. My dad walks in and says, Trav, you doing this? And I said, because the deal with dad is, you told him the truth, you didn't get beat. And he never would have beat you anyway. I think I got one spank in my entire life. Maybe I should have gotten more, but so I was actually a good kid. I just turned into a rough teen and rough 20s and 30s. But
damn hormones.
So he goes, you doing this? And I said, yes, sir. He said, are you addicted? I said, no, sir. He said, good. That shit isn't as good as it used to be. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to be specific about what it was, but that was the advice I got. And it worked. Because I was like, oh, that's probably a bad idea then, Dad. Thank you. That was like, I know that sounds like it sounds like horrible advice, but my dad understood and would just have a conversation. And
he leveled with you as a human being and talk to you like a human being, as opposed to like something that like animal that you're training or haven't been forced to raise or something, you know, like
when he was worried about me, he would pull me aside and go, enough's enough. And I go, yes, sir. And, you know, I made my mistakes. I had my addictions for sure. And have only worked through that in the past 4 or 5 years. So, but you know, that again, it was a testament to my dad, because we had our demons, but we don't give up. You don't stop. You don't quit. You just go. You just keep going, and eventually you get it in the right direction. But I also tell you, he was a big proponent for mental health. He was going to counseling and seeing psychiatrists later in life to help understand the trauma that he went through. And he encouraged me to do the same thing, which was, again, that meekness that you don't understand about my dad. He knew there was more going on, and he actually invested time to work through those things and work through those demons.
And that's all you can ask for in a parental figure, or a friend, or anybody that feels you and loves you as much as that, dude, is just to understand and be there and be like, hey, enough's enough when it's the appropriate time. So hell yeah, man. One thing I want to ask you too, is there, as far as like letting the fans, they came together, they did this awesome thing. Like you say, you set up the GoFundMe for, the funeral costs and all that. And a lot of people I did see that turned out and helped out with that. And that is amazing. So I just want to say thank you to all the fans, because that is the love of, you said earlier, of the wrestling community and the actual fans, because
genuinely, I'll share with you, I think the final bill, and understand I took this over without any support from anywhere else. So it was so unexpected when I took it on.
Yeah.
I just wasn't prepared, and nobody had done anything on the side. And it's funny because people were like, well, how come you didn't do it? I'm his son. Like, I don't get to get into his finances. You can't just go pick somebody up from somebody's house and kidnap them. There's rules, right? You do the best you can. And then I was always cleaning up the mess, like the GoFundMe for his property taxes. I was coming in and cleaning up the mess. I had never been online prior to that, but I, again, just wanted to take care of my father. And I think people loved him enough that they didn't want to see anything bad happen, right? And so I reached out because I knew fans loved him. And I've tried to honor that. I tried to honor that with his funeral. When I took on that, I didn't know we would get any support. Like, I went in and was like, okay, I believe that my father would want this. I have no idea how I'm going to pay for it, but I just believe that God has this in mind, and I'm going to do this on faith. And I knew that I could, I knew what I could pay, right? I just paid for my wedding. And so, this is just a tough time, right? You're just coming through it. But I knew what I could afford, and I knew all the rules, but I knew that people would want this, right? It's that kind of weird thing where I knew that people would want this. And so, I tried to honor that. I tried to honor the fans and everything. Not only I just knew they loved him. I just had a feeling or a faith that this is
he's
what
a celebrity, dude.
Not just because he's a celebrity, but because he impacted lives, right?
Right.
And I mean, really, really impacted lives. And if I had to come up with the entire bill, I was going to figure it out. But I mean, I don't know. How do you say thank you? How do you say thank you for honoring my dad? I just don't have, there's not like a sentence for that. There's not a thank you. There's not a way to say thank you for loving my father's love as in a different way, but just as much as I did. Right. It is so meaningful, and it'll, I don't know how else to say it other than I think it's changed my life, and I'm not sure what my purpose is anymore after this. It's given me a whole new, and I don't mean fame by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
This journey has been life-changing, and I don't know what's in store, but we're just going to take it one day at a time, and I'm gonna go back to work and spend time with my beautiful wife, and spend time with my kids, and get my big green egg outside and cook out.
That's all. Yeah, it's all you can do, brother. It's one day at a time, man. One day at a time. what about a lot of your like your dad's stuff, like ring gear? I seen on your Instagram you had some stuff posted. Is any of that you think you'll probably let go at some point, or
it's too soon.
yeah?
It's too soon. I think right now I'm more so I on Father's Day, oh God, 3 years ago, he had that gold necklace he wore, and the necklace was gone and the cross had broken, and they had given me the cross to make sure nobody took it, and so I got it fixed, and I got him a gold necklace, and I got him his cross back. So this was 3 years ago. That and his Hall of Fame rings have all gone missing.
Really?
So I'm going to work on getting those items, as well as I have every intent to go to the Hall of Fames. Based on his brain capacity, there's no way he was in a capacity to give those items away. And I would like those back. They're rotting away in there, and they need to be with family.
Yeah. I get it, man. I agree. Dude, I guess like in closing here, is there anything that maybe you can pass on to anybody else right now that's, went through a traumatic experience, like losing a loved one, especially someone as close as like their parent? Or is there any advice or anything you can give somebody out there watching and listening right now?
I think the thing that surprised me most was every part of my being wanted to internalize and crawl into a shell and avoid the fight, if you will. I had fought it for what feels like 20 years of my life, if not longer. I feel like I've been fighting for my dad, and you do what you think is right by faith, and you're judged for it afterwards. People don't know the context, they don't know the intent, and quite honestly haven't lived in your shoes. So I would tell anybody that's going through a loss, one is, don't go inside yourself. There is a community around you that wants to support you and wants to love you, even if your father's not famous. Like, I've seen generosity between people that would baffle you, that has nothing to do with my dad's fame. So reach out. I would tell you that mental health is real. It is something we need to truly embrace, and things like my dad grew up with are not acceptable, and we need to have those conversations about the past so we can deal with that trauma and help out the people that come after us. If one thing my dad did in his life, he tried to make this next generation better than the last one. And lastly, I would say I would tell you that my dad, based on everything I've read that he wrote down over and over again, I would really just tell you, to God Almighty, let's just love each other. Like, genuinely, like, all he ever cared about was loving his family, and he loved every one of you. And I see some of the comments that are negative, and I am able to process them and put them in perspective. I see some of the negative comments, but overall the messages, 98% have been more than positive. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I don't pretend to have done everything right. I don't even know sometimes if I did the right thing. But I know my father would know I loved him, I honored him, and I did the best I could. And I would just encourage the rest of us, just like, if my father did anything that was amazing and wonderful, he loved what he did for a living, and he loved every one of you, and he loved his family. And you can't ask for more than that.
That's right, brother. That's right. And hey, man, I just want to take a second once again to thank you so much for sharing, your feelings, your story, about your father and about yourself and everything that you're going through. Hopefully this can help someone down the way. This can, bring, fans, maybe a little bit more insight and closure on the situation. And dude, I appreciate it so much. I honestly do, because
you're welcome. And thank you. It's funny because I did the one for Hannibal. I did the Hannibal interview, and that was because I wanted people to know they had an opportunity to see the funeral. Right. This one I did because I knew I would need to process. And though my instinct is to process internally, and just do it on my own, I can't promise I'm going to be on the internet for very long. Like, part of me wants to go just hide in a hole, delete Instagram, and just disappear for the next 20 years. Right.
Right.
But something tells me there's a message my dad is still intending to send. And I'm going to honor his legacy the best I can.
It's all you can do, man. All you can do. And it's the best thing you could do, because I get it, man. There's times where we doing all this stuff, you just want to get off of Instagram and socials and all that crap. But it means a lot for you to choose us to come on here and talk. And I hope that, in general, my whole propaganda behind this, honestly, was like, I saw a brother in hurt that I don't know. But I like to talk, man. And I like to be here for people that are good people. And I could smell bullshit from a mile away, and you smell it pretty fresh and clean, brothers.
So fresh, so clean.
Yeah, it does. It means a lot, because like this show, dude, we're all about positivity. And like you said, dude, none of us are perfect. We've all had some messed up shit go on in our lives and done some messed up shit. But I really do. And I try to somewhat preach, like, just be kind to each other. And
it's simple.
Find this common ground. And then and only then can we achieve the elusive world peace,
Like somebody texted me the other day and, or sent me a message the other day, and I don't know why I caught it, but he was like, and I'm Muslim. And I'm like, brother,
wow,
we're all in this together. Allah loves all of us. We all just have divergent paths. We have divergent paths. Like, I'm not, like, I can tell you what my faith is, and I respect you if you could give two shits. That's mine. That's why it's my faith. So thank you so much. I think this was therapeutic. I didn't know, like, part of me was dreading it, because I turned into a pumpkin at 8:30. My wife just texted me, is like, you do have to work tomorrow, right? And so I'm gonna have to go to bed. But yeah, man, thank you so much, Justin. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we'll talk again.
Yeah, for sure, brother. Keep in touch, man. Anytime you want to talk, I got your digits. Don't hesitate, man.
I'll save your number tonight.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks
we love
again,
you.
buddy.
We love Mr. Wonderful, dude. It's an honor to have you on this show and help you work through some shit. It really is. And thank you all for tuning in this week. If you like what you heard and what you've seen, hit the like and subscribe button. Be sure to share with your friends. Tell them all about this great podcast we do, because, I know we're wild and crazy kids, but what you just seen and experienced here was humanity at its best, trying to be there for one another in our time of need. And that's what we like to do. So please spread that word, share the show, rate and review on any podcasting platform. It's real simple. It's real easy. Doesn't cost you shit. How much did it cost, Ren? What was it? Yeah. Free. Do it. It helps us. We want to keep doing this, and we want to keep doing bigger and better things. Everybody in Texas, Arlington, Pele Pro, we'll see you there. It's going to be such a bitching good time. Once again, I want to send a shout out to Travis Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful himself. Rest in peace, brother. Hey, until next time, wet them up, man. Wet them up.
You gonna do sex to me?
Did you like that video? If so, be sure to hit like and subscribe and check out more killer content from your boys at Juice Pro Wrestling. Whoa, yeah!